short today. You know, I mean, I love cutting all lengths of hair, but I do have to say, you know, it's fun to start the day off with a little short pixie. You know, a lot of different fad names for this, pixie or crop, whatever, you know, you're accustomed to, but ultimately in a technical sense, it's short layers, right? And, you know, like any kind of layering or any kind of haircut, I mean, that could mean a lot of different things. So I'll take you through the step-by-step as I go. And then, you know, we'll talk more about the look. But, you know, some of the other things that I'm going to start out incorporating is a little bit of disconnection through the top, which I think will give it a fun little twist. You know, so all in all, you know, cool haircut that's, you know, salon friendly for that client that I think is a little bit more progressive and not afraid to cut their hair off. All right. So starting out, I sectioned off just following the curvature of the head and really just taking that up to the natural swirl behind, you know, the crown area, right? Which you'll find, you know, can fall different places on different people. You know, so working with the natural growth pattern. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the haircut in through the side and get that length taken down right away, right? The layering that I'm going to do, I'm going to lift it out and just angle my knuckles away a little bit from the bottom to keep some softness, something, you know, that I can play around with in the refinement stage, but just making sure I get a length that sits down. You know, a lot of times with the doll heads, they jump up. This one seems okay, you know, but you have to just be aware of when you're doing this on a client that you hit the right length for the jump of the hair and for the texture. Once it does jump, you have to go shorter. That's really the only way to work it in.
I mean, that's true with any hair. I mean, if you're working with a calic and you cut it to a length that it jumps up, it just has to be short.
Yeah.
That's, you know, either long enough to lay down or short enough that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can't go backwards, right? So the pre-planning is extremely important. And, you know, the consultation with your client, right, Gerard? You know, I mean, talk to them. If you notice that they have a bit of jump in the crown or in the front, and you're talking about doing a short layered shape, you know, well, are you okay with it jumping up a little bit?
We have waxes, and Davines has great products to actually make that a benefit. But if they want it to lay down, then that's not going to happen.
And that's a different story. But yeah, if they're open to it, work that into the haircut. Right.
I want to give some shout outs to our friends watching. Our buddy Douglas McCoy is watching.
Awesome.
Douglas is trying to make it through 2020. I'm pretty sure the salons in Spokane are opened up again, so I think Douglas is back to work. Hope you're doing well, my friend. We have Jody watching from the Davines team. Great to have you joining us.
Awesome. Hi, Jody.
And we've got people watching from all over the world.
Nice.
Got a few languages that I unfortunately can't interpret, but it looks like everyone's sending some love.
As long as they're not sending me an angry face, we're okay.
So you're cutting it a little shorter internally and a little longer on the edge. So it's like the opposite of graduation.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, if I was graduating, I could do the same thing. You know, same sectioning, same over direction, and just angle my knuckles in to leave length through the top. So you have to think about, I always say that your hand is like a scale, right? And you think about the proportion of where you want to maintain. If you pull away, weight. If you pull away from the bottom, or I should say if you pull away from the top, weight. If you pull away from the bottom, length, right? So, you know, hitting the right angle is extremely important. And then, you know, knowing the shape and knowing how the angles are going to react to the hair.
Our old friend Sid is watching.
Nice.
Sid's over in England these days.
Good that you're watching,
David
Sid.
Kiddingson is here.
Awesome.
Great, some great Sassoon heritage joining us here, Julian.
Yeah, perfect, man. You know, and it's always great, you know, to have a combination of, you know, the Davines community be so supportive and, you know, the hairbrain community being so supportive. And, you know, I would say for the most part, they're one and the same in a lot of cases, right?
Well, we're proud to say we've worked closely with Davines for a very long time. Yeah. They're one of our major supporters at Hairbrained, and I'll be honest, it's a company that I really respect and admire. Family owned, with sustainable business practices, sustainable production. So shout out to Davines for really leading the way.
Yeah, and they care about the community, don't they? You know, and they really try to do things that are, you know, good for hairdressers. And, you know, as hairdressers, we need that support, you know, and, you know, it's just something that we're really fortunate to have with Davines, and something I agree, you know, it makes me, you know, proud and want to be a part of the team and the family.
Well, what is your role as part of the Davines team? What are the type of things that you're doing, and what do you have coming up?
Well, I cut a lot of hair, Gerard.
Well, that's
right?
good.
So I'm one of their educators, one of their guest artists is, I guess, the official title. And I go out into your different Davines salons and distributors and do customized cutting education for the hairdressers. You know, recently we've been doing a lot of virtual classes, which, you know, is great. And I think for, you know, Gerard and myself, this is something that we've been doing for years. You know, we're doing a lot of virtual education. So we were ahead of the curve when it happened. We were ahead of the ball game, right? So, you know, that also doing live education, and that's starting to come back, guys. You know, I did my first class out in Las Vegas. And now I'm going to be going soon to Salt Lake City to do a live cutting class in a great salon out there with some great hairdressers.
Yeah, live education's coming back, you know, following the proper protocols and social distancing. I've got some requests for October and November myself,
Nice.
so it looks like hopefully we'll be able to get back into salons soon.
Yeah, I'm more nervous to get on a plane because I really don't like to fly. So, all right, so back to the haircut. I'm just going to finish this section. I'm going to spin around so Kelly can get a good view for you guys and talk about, you know, some of the things that are running through my head as I do this and what I'm really being aware of.
What's your over direction like, and tension, like what?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up because I'm starting to pass the curve, right? So the curvature of the head. Now with that, I really need to be mindful of the crown area. If it's flat, I may need to over direct and elevate out a little bit more to kind of fill in if that area is flat again. If it's nice and rounded, I can more follow it, so to speak. But I do need to be always mindful. And even though, you know, I am at or I should say I do have a nice curve, I'm over directing a little bit more where the head's flat. And then as it gets wide again, I'll come more straight out. So you're constantly adjusting, you know, your over direction accordingly. Where the head's wide, pull more straight out. Where the head's curved, over direct either forward or back to compensate for it. You know, on paper, you know, you'll see things like 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to, you know, it's very, very, very mathematical, which gives you kind of the gist of the idea. But then you have to be able to adapt the subtleties and be able to adapt, you know, to the head shape, to the hair texture, and to what it is that you're trying to achieve, the overall look, right? So I think this is really nice. You notice I just kind of keep doing this, right? So checking, right? I learned this with barbering at Sassoon. You know, we used to work with a vent brush. We would layer the hair, you know, say like a similar length, and then we would take the vent brush and brush through it and just really see how uniform. You can do the same thing with a comb, right? You just see how uniform all the layers fall and that how they all work together and move together. So I know I'm on the right track.
Sometimes the best cross check is your eyes.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, well that's the first and foremost cross check. You know, I think for me, my eye is much more in tune than my touch. Now it doesn't mean I don't use my touch senses and I don't take the hair and pull down and feel it, but I find I can see it, right? If it's a 1/16, an eighth of an inch longer, I can see it, right? So I trust my eye more than anything.
Julian, Jamie Matthews is with us. She
Awesome.
just finished cosmetology school. She's so glad for this ongoing education. She is starting her first salon job next week.
Woo-hoo.
You have any advice for her? She's nervous.
Yeah, you know, just be professional, you know, be yourself, be a good team player, keep your eyes open, listen, you know, to the people, and hopefully they're going to give you good advice, and this is for everybody, and be patient, you know, because it takes a bit of time. You know, make sure that, you know, either your salon is educating you or you're doing things to educate yourself constantly. Gerard and I, with Hairbrain have put together, a series of videos that can really help you for someone right out of beauty school called the Classic Cutting Foundations. We also, have other videos that, will focus on bobs, will focus on long layers, short layers, and things like this that are out there for you. So try to utilize, everything that's out there, right? And, really try to decipher, or find good education.
How important is it to find mentors, Julian?
Well, that's key. I only know what I know because
of me.
Because of Gerard, yes. Because of the people who showed me the way. And yes, I've had things come to my mind on my own, but that was only because one of my mentors sparked, a thought process for me that then grew into my own. And I was lucky, and me and Gerard are, from the same neighborhood, and we had a lot of the same mentors, and we were both really lucky at a very young hairdressing age, to have great people, share with us. They weren't always nice to us, but that was okay, right?
Yeah, the best mentors aren't always the ones who make you feel great about yourself. And that doesn't mean they should be demeaning to you,
yeah.
But they have to definitely be honest with you.
Well, I am watching Cobra Kai, Gerard.
Yes.
So it is all about...
Strike first.
Strike first.
Strike hard.
Your
no
teacher,
mercy.
Your teacher doesn't have to be the nicest.
Cobra Kai. Jamie Matthews is wondering where you find videos. Well, Jamie, first off, here on Facebook, if you go to the Hairbrain page here on Facebook, the actual page, you click videos, you'll see we've got a catalog of over 500, probably close to 600 live videos, and Julian's done dozens of them, as well as other great educators, including myself. But if you want a higher quality experience, we actually film in a studio, multi-camera, perfect sound, and those are available to purchase at hblive.me. We've got an always growing catalog, and that's what Julian was referring to. We just filmed a comprehensive cutting series Julian and I did. We have regular bi-weekly releases of cut and color that are more on trend, but we're also building our fundamental library, so please check that out, hblive.me.
Yeah. It's amazing because you guys, I'm sure you hear this from us old guys all the time, you don't know how lucky you are. It was funny because I was cutting one of our friend's hair the other day, and he's similar age to me, and he's been skateboarding his whole life. My son's really getting into skateboards, and he's been working with a couple different people on learning how to do these different things that I never learned. And we were talking about how he learned when he was a kid. And he would be like, we would get a magazine and it had a picture of this guy like in the air doing this trick that we had to try to decipher and figure out how to do it. Where now it's like, boom, you hit YouTube and they show you a step-by-step.
Well, funny story, it's not even going back that far.
It's not that far,
In 1999, around 2000, when I first left Sassoon, I wanted to learn how to use a straight razor. And there's a certain way of holding it, but there were no videos, there was no YouTube. I had to look in a Bumble and Bumble magazine to learn how to hold the razor. The same thing, I kept looking at the picture, and hopefully I got it right.
I don't know. I'm still kind of the jury's out on that one.
Yeah.
All right, so starting the other side now. The biggest difference here is the hand position. So you can see that my fingers are down and I'm pulling out this way. And that's due to, I'm trying to follow the system of standing in front of my section, working palm to palm, and over-directing towards my body. So on the first side, you notice I stood here, and my fingertips were up, and I pulled out with my knuckles and cut down. And then I walked around the head, right, little half steps all the way through. Now, as I hit the other side, we'll turn that rather than me going over there. Now I'm standing in front of this section the same, but now my fingers are forced to be down, right? And I'm going to walk around the head the same way and then hopefully match in the center back. So consistency is really key, and trying to do things in a very methodical way, right? So feeling that being so structured and methodical can take away from creativity. But ultimately what it does is it gives me the control that I can make whatever my creativity in my mind is, produce it on a head, right? And produce it with the hair, if possible. So, you know, the systems that we have are really important. And if you follow the system and you understand how it is that we cut hair, right? There's really nothing you can't do. And then you also learn, well, sometimes I don't do exactly what the system says because of the situation I'm in, you know, and then from there, I have an understanding of why, and I understand the difference, right? So you can see the layers coming around the face, right? Similar length from side to side. Now I'm starting to get into that area through the back again, right? Where I'm going to start to go down below behind the ear. So the sectioning pattern is really simple. You start with a vertical diagonal right at the temple, and then you maintain that vertical diagonal until you cross the center. Then you do the same vertical diagonal, maintain until you cross the center, right? Once I'm done that, well then I have, you know, the sides and the back finished.
And what's your over direction? Are you pulling forwards at all? Or
Yeah, minimal really. You know, again, because the head shape is pretty rounded and pretty symmetric, if it wasn't, I would have to maybe over direct more or less in certain areas. You know, and I think about it like positive and negative space. And I said it briefly before. Where the head shape is recessed, I need to add. I add by over directing away from that area, either forward or backwards or both. Where the head shape's wide, I need to reduce, right? So it's like this scale that you're kind of, you know, trying to balance on the head shape. It's like, you know, positive and negative space. Where it's positive, you have to introduce negative and take away. Where it's negative, you need to add positive and build up.
Julian, could this approach work on any texture of hair, or is it specific to this kind of straight or wavy
I mean,
hair?
this concept and this idea can work on any texture, any length, any technique. It's basically, you know, the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the suitability factor of it. It's what creates suitability within a head shape, right? You know, I'll never forget the interview with Vidal, and you know, he was talking about how they learned how to cut hair in the 60s, and he was saying, you know, in the 60s we learned how to enhance the anatomy, right? And what that really means, I mean, when you think about it and go deep into it, right, it's making the head shape look more flattering. It's making the face shape look more flattering. It's not just plopping something on top of something, right? He also mentioned that, you know, back in the 60s, we learned how to cut hair as if we were tailors, right? And in the beginning, I was the same, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, you have to look at hair like a fabric. We stay true to the fabric and things like that. Well, that's great, you know, and I'm sure that was part of what he was saying, but what he was really saying was we learned how to make measurements and make something fit the head shape, just as a tailor measures the body and makes a clothing, you know, garment, skirt, pants, shirt, whatever it may be, fit the body, right? So as a tailor would. All right, so taking this now into the bottom, just following that angle through. So it does flatten out a little bit. I don't want to continue, unless you, I mean, guys, you can continue that angle. You can get a mullet, right? If you want to learn how to cut a mullet, do this, and then just come here and keep the finger angle out.
Is that because the head shape changes?
Yeah, the head shape rounds in, the hairline's lower, right? So it's automatically, it's going to drop down. But when it drops down more so than the natural progression, then we have a mullet. So if this is 4 inches from the back of the ear to the hairline, and this is 4 inches, no mullet. If this is 4 inches, and then from this point to here is 12 inches, then we have a mullet, right? So it's extending it more so than the natural descend of the hairline.
Julian, could this be broken up into smaller panels, maybe for someone who might feel this is a lot for them to control?
Yeah, you could, like, if I was going to break it down, you know, especially with the balance factor, I might go from front to ear on the left, from front to ear on the right. From back of ear to the center, the top panel. From the back of ear to the center, the bottom panel. So divide this in half, right? Then do the same. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, what I find is the more you break something down into panels, the more chance you have a discrepancy of your guideline and a little kind of, it's like almost like when you're welding two pieces of metal together, you get a seam, right? You can see it, right? So you tend to get a little bit of seam there. So if you can work it through in one piece, you're less likely to have that seam. So following this through.
So now the head shape's really changing. So what's going through your head here as the head starts to curve away from you?
Well, vertically, I'm coming in. You see, I'm coming in a little bit. So I come out, and then as the head shape curves, I flatten out. But now as it curves from side to back, like I said, the wider this is, the less I'm going to over-direct. The flatter the crown is, the more I'm going to over-direct to fill in that area. You know, so again, we're back to positive and negative space. Now, you don't notice things like that as much on long hair, but I mean, if you want to cut really good long hair, the same rules apply. You're just further away from the head, right? But you may not notice it. When you're cutting this close to the head, everything is so obvious, right? That's why I love short hair. I love barbering because of the challenges. You know, because your margin of error is really minimal. You know, so you start to get into a 16th of an inch. Where on long hair, I mean, a 16th of an inch is going to disappear within the hair very easily. Not to say that you should be sloppy, never sloppy, but you know, just you have to think, right? Above a 16th of an inch is very obvious. You can see it.
Julian, this was going to be a big year with Davines with the Worldwide Hair Tour, but
yes,
obviously due to COVID, that's been postponed.
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing to keep the global community from Davines inspired?
Yeah.
Doing digital classes? Is there anything there that's going to take the place of Worldwide Hair Tour?
Well, I mean, I think right now the world's still up in the air, you know, and I don't think, you know, there's been, at least that I know of, any 100% commitment on anything, you know, and that's definitely not because of Davines, it's just because of where we are, you know, in the situation. But what we have been trying to do in a positive sense, I mean, more online presence as far as doing these things with you. I know you've been doing a lot with Michael Polsinelli, who's also here, you know, in Los Angeles, Southern California area, who's a great guest artist.
Yeah, we're doing ongoing series.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got James Abu Alba. Is
Nice.
that right, Cal?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're going to have another 3-week series starting next week with James Abu Alba. Great cutting educator, method education.
Yeah. You know, and then we've been doing a lot of online classes. Like I said, you know, I've been doing a lot, you know, for private salon groups that, you know, I'll do a half day, a look and learn. I think about a week or two, I have a hands-on online. Right, which is great, you know, and it'll be a little bit, you know, more entailed to video it, but it'll be interactive where I can see what the attendees are cutting and I can coach them, you know, because I'll be looking at a screen when they're cutting, right, and I can say, hey, Gerard, your hand's completely wrong. What are you doing, right? You know, so it'll be a nice coaching. And then, like I said, I mean, for me as a hairdresser, and you know, I think this carries through for Davines, our connection is best made live in front of people. You know, it's like when I do a class, I say at the end of every class, I'm like, the thing I miss most is seeing your face, right? And having that interaction, sitting and having lunch together, because like, you know, when there's a lunch break, I'm sitting there with you and we're talking, and it's just a continuation of discussion. In the morning when the stylists are coming in, we're, hey, how's it going? I mean, I know a lot of them, meet new people, we're having a coffee together. So it's a real social event that I think really connects us as a community, which is important. It's something, you know, that you can never replace. So now I can see, just taking that other side, it doesn't reach over, so I know it's going to blend, right? So that's pretty good. I have a little bit, I'll be honest with you guys, I never lie. I have a little bit right here. That's not bad, right? So now what I need to do is just find where that starts, right there. I'll just go back through that and take that, 1/8 of an inch off, right? So do it the same way, just come back through. Haircutting is a process. I mean, anybody that tells you, that, they every time they do it, it's perfect the first time round. I mean, they can't be checking their work very well, or they're just someone, or they're just, I don't know what to say. There's always a little bit of cross-checking, a little bit of a process of adjusting things, to make it work. I mean, it's organic.
Why, you don't know any shortcuts or cheap, easy ways to get it done?
No, man. Not that I would ever want to do. It's just, I mean, that's not why I'm in this game. I love cutting hair, and to me, I love the challenge.
You're a craft hairdresser.
There you go. I guess that's the definition of the word. Someone who really just cares about the craft. Yeah, cares about the craft. And it's funny because to me, it takes just as much effort to do something poorly, right? And actually, it takes more effort because it would stress me out. But if I was a carpenter, if I was, a tile, a tile layer, a floorer, if I was any kind of craft, profession, your craft is everything, that is you. And it's what we put our heart and soul in. So I always want it to be as perfect as possible. If someone doesn't want a good haircut, I don't want to cut their hair. Let me spin around, Kelly. Yeah, I know. Jared, how many times have we sat, especially in the beginning, for 2 hours chasing that piece of hair around the head?
Oh, many times.
It's just like trying our hardest and doing everything that we can. And it's like, at the end of every haircut, you should almost feel exhausted, right? You should feel like, I just put everything, in my soul into this haircut. And then, take 30 seconds, walk into the staff room, shake it off, and come out and do it for the next client, man. It's hard. It's hard what we do. So I can't remember her name, that was starting her first salon job.
I think it was Jamie.
Jamie, I mean, if you're still watching, that's being a hairdresser. That's being a professional. When I said be a professional, right? It's that amount of care in what we do. And, once you stop caring, don't do it anymore, right? Go find something else. Now, there's times when I'm like, oh my God, that's normal, right? Where I just don't want to deal, right? But, they're short-lived.
We all need to take a break sometimes,
Oh, yeah. Well, I took a break not when I was working with Sassoon. This is a funny story, guys. So I was creative director at Santa Monica Academy, and I was working there for quite a long time. I think I was about 15 years in, with Sassoon between New York and LA, and I started to feel that little bit, right? And at the same time, I was really starting to hone in on my martial arts skill. And that's something that I've been doing since I've been a kid. But I found a teacher who at the time was very inspiring to me. Yes, his name was Johnny from Cobra Kai.
Right? Cobra Kai.
Back to everything's about Cobra Kai today, guys. So please bring it up to your clients. But anyway, I made a decision that I was done, right? And when I do anything, I do it 100%. So I was never cutting hair again. I was giving away scissors, I was giving away blow dryers, I was giving away everything because I was completely finished with hairdressing. And I went in to talk to my boss, Stephen Moody, at the time. And I just sat down with him like, Stephen, I'm done. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm done. He's like, you're done what? I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm leaving. I'm retiring, right? So he's like, well, okay. Well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to China. He's like, okay, so you're going to China. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to study Kung Fu. I'm going to go study with the monks, right? He was like, Steve, now have you ever met Steven? He was the most straight-laced, serious, I don't mean this in a bad way, serious person you've ever met, very practical minded. And he's like, Julian, have you lost your mind? Like, I have a house to pay for, and I got this and that. You know, he wanted to send me to like some kind of like psychiatrist or drug rehab because he thought I just was like going completely nuts or, you know, started doing something else. But I'm like, nah, man, I'm done. So for a year, all I did was study and train Kung Fu. And I finally got to the point after about a year and a half, you know, of training, you know, where I was teaching Kung Fu and I was having so much fun doing it. But then after a while, I really missed, you know, this. I missed it. Gerard, could you hand me the spray bottle? I really missed cutting hair and I missed the interaction. So like a year or so later, you know, I called Steven up like, hey man, can I come in and talk to you? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I went in and I'm like, I want my job back. He was like, what? I'm like, yeah, I want my job back. You know, I want to be the creative director, one of the creative directors here again. And it's hysterical. So, you know, long story short, I got my job back and started where I left off. So it's funny.
All right, so the underneath is complete. You drop down the top.
Yeah.
What's happening now?
Well, you know, there's so many things that could go, so many directions I could go in, Gerard, here. I'm going to start out, I'm going to do two for you guys, right? Because I want to show you this connection that would work on, obviously, you know, this shape. You could do it male, female, doesn't matter. You know, subtle differences, obviously, you know, but same idea. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a vertical strip down the center and get this hair out of the way. Right? Tilt that so you can see that. I'm just going to keep it to the side so you can see. Now I have this length here in the crown, which is really important. Right? So I'll pull back up so you can see the proportion, right? Now I need to make sure that I don't, get that out of the way. I don't cut this hair too short in this area. Because again, I'm getting to the high point of the head. And if I cut this in too much, it's going to get really short. So what I want to do is I'm going to come back a little bit, and I kind of say I'm going to turn the corner slowly. So I'm going to cut up. You see my fingers are angled up, lift, take that guideline, cut up, take that guideline, and just slowly walk myself forward into the length in the front. Now I can take this and just see where that wants to fall, right? So I got about lip length there, which is a nice length, I think. Now from there, I'm going to take this. I'm going to follow that. I'm over-directing straight up. So I'm not pulling everything to the center. And I'll show you, I'll spin around and show you what I'm trying to do with my elevation in 1 second. So with my elevation, like if you imagine all the teeth of the comb are one section, right? So that's the shape of the head. I'm pulling it up like this, right? So I'm creating a flat surface from center out, right? If I combed it to the center, I would do this. I would create a V shape, right? Concave, what we call it, through the top. So I'm going to keep the layering through the top flat. So I have a rounded layering on the underneath, connected in the crown into what I would call a flat triangular layer for those hair nerds out there that like to get down with it.
Now I notice you're cutting over the hand.
Yeah, and that's, elevation, body position, you know, and to generalize, normally below the round, unless I'm pulling out really far, I cut inside the fingers, right, especially on short hair. And then above the round, I cut over the knuckles so that I keep a soft elbow. You know, the body position is really important. If I tried to cut this over the knuckles, right, my elbow's up over my shoulder, that's not good, right? So if I tried to cut this inside, right, now I'm too choked up and I can't reach. So I release the pressure by working over the fingers, and keep my elbows soft and natural, right? Keep my back straight.
I never heard that soft elbows term before.
Oh, yeah.
It's an interesting one.
Well, you have to think they're like shock absorbers, right? You know, so they never should be stiff and they never should be up higher, right? And twisting above your shoulder, right? You want to keep them here. You know, nice and relaxed, nice and soft. We cut with tension, not intention. I'm sorry, we cut with intention, right? Not tension. We don't want to tense up and be stiff. Okay, so now you can see how that blends in, and I have this length through there. This is cool if you do like a nice fade and then this kind of disconnection through the top with like a pompadour. Many, many options on this kind of feel and this disconnection. So now I spin around, and again, I'm going to try to work the same way. The only difference is now I'm cutting from front back, but I have my guideline, so it should be okay. There it is. So now I'm cutting here.
And are you just visually choosing that angle? Could it be steeper or less steep?
Yeah, you know, you have to, like when I first did it, you know, remember I stopped and looked, right? And, you know, I pulled it up and I pulled it down and looked, said, oh, it's falling to the lip. That's a nice length. You know, so having an idea of where you want it to fall, and then, I mean, definitely make sure that it falls there. You know, so you're doing what you think. And ever, if there's any, you know, kind of question, just leave it longer, right? But at the end of the day, too long is just as bad as too short. But, you know, while you're working it in progress, it's okay, you know, to really spend the time to make sure you get the proportion and length. Because I'm pulling this up, guys, I mean, I'm pulling it up. I don't need to worry about this underneath hair, so I'm not being sloppy. I just know that that hair is going to fall out, and it's not going to come up into this length anyway.
And would you keep this completely disconnected from all the hair in the temples?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the idea. Now, I will make sure I got some little bit of a visual connection in through the crown, or I mean, sorry, in through the curve behind the ear. So now what I'll do is I'll take this, comb that out of the way, and now I'll comb this back. Just like I did in the crown, I'm going to connect this area through. But I'll use the same over direction to maintain length in the front. So this just so that you don't have like this really aggressive drop off through. You know, you can see it a little bit more here, where it's a little bit more blended through the sides. And the key area, because you see how far this comes back. So the key area of this connection is that, right? In through the temple area. And it's great because, you know, you have a short layer, but you have this long front to kind of play around with, you know, which is fun, I think, you know, for the clients. And it's, you know, short hair, but it's not just completely taken off, right? So work this through the same. Just going to tilt the head to make my body position a little bit easier. Much easier for the client to tilt their ear, you know, to the side than me to try to twist and conform my body.
Can you talk about your choice of comb and scissor? Do you use different tools for different techniques? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, but I do. But if I'm going to travel, and if I want one pair, it's going to be a pair like this, right? Straight edge. These are the hairbrain scissors. You know the
HB Pro 1.
HB Pro 1.
It's our workhorse.
Yeah. So I mean, I could travel the world just with this and do everything I need. That's about it, right? You know, so it's kind of funny. You know, I know a lot of people get caught up in having like 50 pairs of scissors, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with it, but, you know, I went to see Willie Nelson in concert, and he played for about 2 hours. He had one guitar.
Just one guitar?
Just one guitar, man. So, you know, when I travel, I come with my tool pouch, and that's it, you know. And in the tool pouch, I have a pair of scissors. I have a couple of these just in case I drop them and I'm doing clients, you know, but this is the YS Park comb,
339.
the 339, which is your standard size with your standard teeth, with your, you know, little, you know, tooth there that helps you section that's shorter, right? So I really like this because I can get really clean sections, and then I work with, you know, the YS Park clips. So it's funny, I mean, in my Instagram, which if you're not aware, at Julian Pearl, P-E-R-L. You know, I posted this picture. I don't know if I've taken it down yet. And basically, I just showed scissor, comb, clips, brush. And I was like, oh, and then I had a phone charger, right? And I was like, I'm packing for my seminar. This is all that I'm bringing. And that's pretty much it. You know, you can do everything with it. That's why I don't do color, guys. You have to pack so much stuff. I'm just kidding. All right, so there you have this look. And I mean, you can imagine it dry. You could dry this so many different ways. You could smooth it out. You could put a little bit of fullness. You could do many different things with it. But this is, to me, is not a Pixie, right? This is short layers with a long top, right? So now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take this top down, right? Now when I take it down, I'm going to start out with the same section. But I'm not going to be so passive in the crown area. I'm going to make sure I keep the length right, but because now I want to follow it in and take that line from back to front much flatter. So I'm not angling out anymore. And you can see how much length I'm getting rid of now. And then just round it through the front. Right, now I can see that layer here. Okay, so that looks good. Now the sectioning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pivot out like a fan. I'm still going to over direct up a little bit, not as much because I'm shorter now and your motions are more magnified when you're working on short hair. So a little motion creates a lot.
So basically with this sectioning, you could do a lot of different things with the top. You're showing different variables.
Yeah, you know, and that's kind of the thing. And you remember, like, Gerard, when we were first learning, you know, we would have these core haircuts that we would do, right? And that was our vocabulary because we didn't have the technical vocabulary, you know, at the time. And, you know, we would do like the Firefly and the Graduated Bob, and we had fad names for all the haircuts, the Shape, the Isadora, whatever it may be, right? And I remember us talking and be like, yeah, I'm gonna cut the back like a Firefly, I'm gonna do the sides like your Graduated Bob, I'm gonna do a top like this. But as it evolved, you know, those names, as fads do, fade away. And we learned that it wasn't a true geometric terminology. It also wasn't based on the science of mathematics and physics. So we really started to look at those haircuts at the time and start to really kind of dissect, well, what technique is it? What shape is it, right? And then we started to talk more in one length layer graduation. We started to talk more into round, square, triangle. Now there was little bits of that, little bits and pieces in it, but not nearly as, you know, what was developed at the time in that kind of like, you know, late mid-90s, right? And it really became truly a geometrically articulated system. So we looked at things, you know, like I call this a Pixie, but at the same time, I have to say, well, what's the techniques being used to create that image? So you can see how much shorter, right, it got. What's nice also about that little pivot, if they do have any recession here in the temple, you can kind of pull up a little bit at that area so that you don't create a hole there, right? So you just fill that in. I had a little corner there because I exaggerated it that I'll work with after I do the other side. So same thing.
At what point do you start thinking about, you know, what the appropriate styling product is going to be?
Well, you know, I already figured it out even before I started. You know, so I have my pomade that I'll put in and show you guys in a minute. But you know, I think when you're working in the salon, you have all the products right there. You know, they're all there at your disposal. You know, so based on the texture, how it reacts, you know, I may choose something a little heavier.
Do you
Right.
sometimes use any type of a cutting lotion? Like
Yeah, I have. I'll show you guys. Just let me finish this section. Haven't gotten into my product usage yet, but good as time as any. Let me finish this section. So, you know, to wet the hair down after it's shampooed, I used, you know, I conditioned this. It was clean. But I used the Momo conditioner, which is really great. Adds moisture to the hair. And then, you know I wet it down with a water bottle, but I also in the beginning put the Day Day hair mist in. You know, which is great. It's not heavy, but it does give you a little bit of conditioning agent in there. And I think it helps if the hair tends to be a little bit coarse, but it's not, I think things that you put in the hair, at least for me, I'm very sensitive in the sense of how the hair feels. And if something makes it feel slippery, I don't like it because it just messes with my tension. You know, so I love the Day Day because it's light. And even on fine hair, it doesn't weigh the hair down, so you don't have to worry about, you know, a buildup in there, getting too heavy. And then also, you know, with coarse hair, it helps with the condition of the hair.
Oh, Julian, a big change like this, if you had a client who had that long bob and you were taking them short like this, you know, how would you try to make them feel most comfortable about it? You know, it could be kind of a little bit nerve-wracking for them. What's the advice for people that are maybe, because I think a lot of times hairdressers can be intimidated to cut off so much hair.
Well, first of all, if you're intimidated, they're going to feel it. And they're not going to necessarily feel confident in you, right? So I think you get a lot of the confidence from the clients by projecting yourself with confidence. Now, I don't mean, you know, lie to them and just yes them to death, because that freaks me out when someone just tells me everything yes, because I know they're just bull, right? But understand how to explain it in a confident way, be positive about it, but be honest about it as well. And then the most important thing is your hands, right? You know, it's like when someone who does something touches you, you can feel their confidence, right? When you watch someone do something that's really used to working with those tools, you can see the confidence, right? And, you know, just being able to show that I'm in control, I know what I'm doing, I have control of the hair, I have control of the situation, I'm not fumbling around, I'm not, you know, I'm working with a system, I'm not just randomly picking stuff up and chopping it off. You know, I think all of those things really help show confidence to your client and make them feel comfortable. Now, there's going to be nothing that is going to, I think, take away the feeling of a big change, but, you know, it's kind of like a roller coaster to a lot of people. You know, it's like they want that kind of like, oh man, you know, and, you know, I love that feeling when I'm cutting a client, that, you know, I can feel that they're not nervous in the sense of, oh my God, this is going to not work or look ugly, but a little bit kind of on the edge of their seat because it's new. You know, and then I think for young hairdressers, it's also know who you're talking to. You know, when you're talking to someone who is a professional person, we'll leave it at that, speak to them professionally. Don't speak to them like you're speaking to a 14-year-old kid. You know, talk to them like a professional. Know what you're talking about and say it in a very intelligent, articulate way. You know, you don't need to use big words, but be confident. Again, it goes back to confidence. And, you know, sound like you know what you're talking about. When you're speaking to someone, you know, who may be a little bit younger and may be able to handle, you know, a certain way of describing something, that is a little bit less professional, that's okay, you know. But it's kind of funny, I think, when you get our age, you know, you don't want to sound like the word, my son's 11, and the words and terms that he uses and thinks are cool, you know, are a lot different than some of the words that I might use, because I'm stuck in the time when I was using those words.
So it looks like you're refining the outline using pointing and slicing. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I want the edge to look organic. So I want it to look, you know, the word of the day yesterday was broken, right? So I want it to look a little bit broken, not so blunt. So I'm still getting a shape in there and working a little bit to the corner behind the ears with the pointing. But then as the hair gets longer, I'm just slicing into that corner a little bit. And you'll notice, like on the other side, I just pulled that out, check it technically as well. Now, I cut the length, I think, pretty good through the sides here. So I don't think I need to do much. You know, I could just lightly slice through here. If it's heavy, just break that up. But just, again, to give it a softer, more natural, organic edge.
I've got a question, Julian. A lot of times I think when people take hair short, they might put the outline in first. Like they go in, they cut the length around, and then they go from there. Why did you choose to do it afterwards?
Well, I mean, I think you get a better sense of how the hair is going to react. And when you cut the outline in first, you're placing restrictions on the hairline, where I want to cut it and see how it evolves and then work it in its natural state. So I think you get a much more natural look out of it. You can always go back through and put a hard line in. But once you put a hard line in, it's really hard to get rid of it. You know, it's like putting black tint on the hair. You know, it's there, right? And you'll spend the next however long trying to change it, and it still won't work. So, you know, I find let the outline evolve into the shape, and then there's always going to be inconsistencies because the hairline isn't consistent. And then from there, go back and do your refinement. So here's the temple area I was talking about before. So you see I didn't get that hole here because I left a little bit by doing that kind of pivoting fan section through the top. And now I'm just kind of slicing through. Again, it's not much, guys, at this stage. If you get a good basic shape in there and everything works really well,
this should be fun. It shouldn't be fixing mistakes.
I'm not fixing anything. I'm just refining it. You know, and it is fun. It's putting your little signature on the haircut. But the haircut has to be there, right? The haircut has to be there first. So, all right.
So working with Julian Perlingiro on behalf of our good friends at Davinez, North America, I want to thank Davinez for that continued support of Hairbrand and our mission to bring great education to everyone. Now it looks like you're starting to put some product in there.
Yes, I have my pomade. It's quite light, and what I like to put it in with the hair with a little moisture in there because it definitely softens it a little bit. You know, so if the hair is completely dry, it doesn't work through, I think, as evenly. You know, now if I wanted to, after I dried the hair, you know, put a little bit more in, I could always go back through and add product. But just that little bit of moisture in the hair, again, helps the hair really, or helps the product go through the hair really easily. And then I can just kind of sculpt it in. It's not meant to be perfect, guys. In the sense, I'm not going to go like, oh, this one goes here, this one goes here. It's just meant to be like, grab it and move it around and let it be a little bit tousled and messy. And the best way to do that is to not touch it too much. Right? I think when we get to trying to place it, you know.
And Julian, do you have some upcoming courses? You know, you were mentioning that you have these digital courses where people can get a little bit.
Yeah, I got a couple. I have one in October, and if you go to Davinez Pro, you'll be able to see the date. Off the top of my head,
we've got October 26th and November 16th. Thanks, Jody, for the assist. The classes are only $25, and you head to davinezpro.com to learn more. So in those classes, it's a smaller group. You're only working with a handful of people.
Yeah.
And Do you do a little bit more creative work?
Imaginative work.
Imaginative.
You know, it's like the word creative, I think, I don't like it anymore, right? Because I think it's used and abused, and people think of creative as like something that looks like, you know, it's never going to be worn on anybody. But it's kind of stimulating your imagination a little bit more about some possibilities of what you can do. Obviously, working with the precision haircutting structure that, you know, I've been working on, you know, my whole career really. You know, so pushing the limits a little bit further, right? Where, you know, with Hairbrained, as, you know, as cool as this looks, I would place this into your more kind of structured fundamental categories, right? Even though it looks great, very effective, you can do it in the salon day in and day out. It's a little bit more of your fundamental, you know, fundamental work. So, you know, kind of a little bit to the next level. And then, you know, from there, if you're with the Davinas family, you can always talk to your distributorship about, you know, opportunities that you have with me doing different things throughout the states.
Either on Zoom or actually visiting the salon.
Yeah. And you can also contact me at my Instagram at Julian Pearl. I also, for, you know, those that are not in the Davinas world, I also do private education, you know, that's purely based on haircutting, you know, so it could be for anybody, right? So cool.
All right, Julian, it's been awesome working with you over these past few weeks with this series. I do want to, again, thank Davinas for their ongoing support and let everyone that loves Julian Perlingiro know about heading to davinaspro.com, where you can sign up for a little bit more intimate class or have Julian come and join you. All right, guys, peace out. Thanks again, and we'll be back tomorrow with more great education here on Facebook.